The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Why is it a good thing? Why is it positive in the long run to allow these big corporations to fail?
Oh, well, that's important because what you do if you prop up a bad corporation, you take the money away from the good corporation. You tax them. So it's just the opposite of free market. So you would, in a free market, you might have some corrections when people get excited and then they malinvest. But the most important thing you do is you back off, and it's called a correction. So you don't want to interfere with the correction. They come along and try to correct the errors that individuals make, but it's hard to come along and correct the errors that the government makes. How do you correct it unless you change the philosophy? And that is what happens. The mistakes that are made out there, and you can't change them and go back and say do it a different way. But I think yes, spending is bad, deficits are bad, interest rates are very important, but the malinvestment is very important because to get this thing going again, you have to have the correction, liquidation of debt and liquidation of malinvestment. No politician can, support that, have any authority. And you wouldn't be president if you supported them because everybody wants the bailout. And they're going to get, and I predict they're going to want and demand the bailouts until the whole thing comes down. And the correction is a different understanding of monetary policy and a strong desire of the people to want to live free and take care of themselves, selfish responsibility. And right now, we teach and preach that people should be dependent on the government. And if you're not dependent on the government, you're unpatriotic.
Yeah, so on that note, we talked about bailouts, and that's more kind of like the mainstream narrative. But I think that narrative will transition from bailouts for corporations to bailouts for Main Street. So let's talk about universal basic income. I think we're kind of seeing the start of it with these additional unemployments and stimulus checks. Do you think that's something that we're going to see long term? It's going to be more permanent?
Yeah, the attempt will be, and they've started to do that. We're sort of already fully testing the modern monetary theory. But the one thing is it won't work because the prices are going to go up faster than the money they send them. So they're sending them money, and you might as well send them just pieces of paper. So eventually it quits working, and that's why printing all that money in Venezuela and Zimbabwe, they end up with just very, very high prices. And then what it does, it encourages an underground economy. People will start bartering. They still will find some coins to use and this sort of thing. But no, they will do that. And I think politically, they are astute to that. And they know that they have to appeal to the working class more so than they did in 07, 08, because the statistics were so bad that they got wiped out. But they're already bad now for the average person and a small businessman. And they're not going to be able to just send more checks there and rebuild these cities because the cities are being torn up by people who are abusing their responsibilities and using taxpayers' money. And all they're saying now is, we don't believe in having police, but send more money to us and take care of us. They still want the money and they still want their food stamps, but it's not going to, it'll quit working. And so they will politically appease to them, certainly in the next several months. They'll try to point out, both parties will try to point out, yes, that we really do care. And I am convinced, absolutely convinced, that if you are concerned and you have interest, and most people do have a humanitarian concern, and that is if you care about poor people and people don't have enough food, you have to look at the statistics that show the freer a society is, the freer the market, the sounder the money is, the better it is for the middle class, and the better it is for eliminating the very poor. So that gives the most wealth ever known to mankind. We had a taste of it, but then we've drifted away from it for 100 years.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, I'd love for you to go into a little greater detail on a video I just watched of yours from the other day about the FEDcoin that was introduced recently. And this is kind of I see it as a transfer mechanism for UBI that will be adopted quite enthusiastically by the general populace because they'll get this free money on their phone or their app or whatever. But then in your video, you really dove into how this is extremely Orwellian, 1984, and how it will allow the Fed and or the government to control spending, especially with the mainstream narrative now, with all these businesses having to be woke or having to be, have some sort of socialist or social justice agenda, that they could transfer the spending to where you could only spend your Fed coins at these businesses that had taken a knee and pledged some sort of, who knows what they'll have to pledge in the future, but we could see this kind of coming down the pipeline. So could you explain how that FEDcoin really gets us from where we are now to this kind of Orwellian 1984 type scenario?
Yeah, and I know they have their goals, and I hope I understand that pretty well, but they also have some hurdles to overcome because governments are inept and their planning doesn't always work out quite right. But everybody's going to have an account, and they'll send it to the account. And I'm pretty amazed that, just in these last few months, how many checks they sent out to everybody. Yeah, everybody got a check, the $600 or $600 and $1,200 that they got. And they did that, and just almost like overnight they were able to do that. Oh, they did make a few mistakes. A million or 2 million people who are already dead ended up getting checks. So they're inept. So it's not going to work, and they won't have control. It will be very conducive for inflation, but the social controls, I think, is what you're addressing. Yes, yeah. If it's moved cautiously and softly, and government is like more successful, it will lead to just more intrusion into your liberties because they'll know more about it. And this looks like, from the surface, it would be only the money that they send, but eventually they'll use that same technique of saying, well, FEDcoin's working pretty well. Everybody's on FEDcoin, and even the people who aren't get it straight from the government, you'll have to go in and have your account. Now, I got to thinking, well, you're gonna have your account. Your name's gonna be on it, and you get to spend it as you need it. And I keep thinking, that's what they told Americans in 1935. We're gonna have this account for you, and we're gonna take care of it. Of course, it didn't do a thing. So I think it's economics, it's political, but it's also this social control, which I mentioned in the article.